I'm going to do a little short video on refining some contaminated silver. One of my pals back in Pennsylvania sent me some silver that when it got melted, there was either it wasn't all silver or it was plated or something, but there's foreign metals mixed into that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is weigh it. I'm going to use nitric acid to refine this, so I'll take the pieces. Oh, my scale went off. Turn on the scale, get set for grams. I'll put the silver on there. So I have 27.27 grams of metal. So I will take that, I'm going to multiply that by 1.22 and calculate out the volume of nitric acid, which is, I'm using the 68% solution, or 70 the common. It's a lab grade, but I don't have scientific instruments, so it'll be close. And then when I process this out and precipitate it out and then weigh it, that will give me some kind of a clue of how much contaminants were in it. So I'll get the process set up and explain as we go. Okay, one of the first steps I have to do is I have to get this metal, whatever it is, molten and pour it to make shot. That way the acid will react a little quicker on it and I won't be here all day. That melted up really fast. Now I'm gonna make some shot out of it. Metal's nice and bright. Looks good. I'm going to have to crumble it. Wow. That looks like pure. Well, just wondering if the contamination wasn't white gold. I'll find out in the nitric acid. Okay, I'm getting ready to go here. I've got a Corningware dish. It's just a safety reservoir in case something breaks, on a little hot plate. And then in the background, because of the fuming, I have a fan that once this thing starts to fume, I will just turn the fan on and not get around on this side. In fact, I'll move the camera before I do. Got my nitric acid in the beaker right there. Got distilled water in the beaker in the Corningware. I put the full amount of distilled water needed, and then I'll put the nitric acid in there in about 2 or 3 installs. I'm doing a real small volume here. And then this spritzer bottle is just a bottle of distilled water, because you would think that a lab beaker, the pour spout wouldn't drip, but they do. They either drip or run down the spout. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move the camera, and then I'll get the reaction going on this. You want to be very, very careful of the fumes. They're very toxic. The fan dilutes them, blows them out in the atmosphere, and I stay on the back side of it, so I don't end up breathing it. You can smell it, but very faintly. Normally what you do is you put about 1/3 of the acid in at a time. It just keeps the reaction from going wild on you and possibly bubbling over. Before I bought the Corningware, I bought a Pyrex 9 by 11 by 2 inch baking dish. I had a 500 milliliter sitting on the hot plate, and it was in the final stages of the third step, and I just heard a little snap. Well, I didn't see anything wrong, and I was sitting back in a chair, and just the Pyrex dish exploded. There was nothing left but little bitty chunks, I think about a 1 inch by 1.5 inch piece. But the beauty of it was is it blew up out from under the beaker, and the beaker was still just sitting there on the hot plate. Didn't make a mess in the driveway. I'm doing this outside. That's why I'm hoping I'm talking loud enough, because I live right next to a freeway. So we're going to let this go and react. You can see the water is changing color. Well, water and acid. So we'll just continue to do this, but it's going to take me an hour or two to do this process. So I'm going to let that bubble until it bubbles down, and then I'll add another third of the acid, and the process will start all over again. And the trick is to use the right amount of acid to where it consumes all the silver and also consumes all the acid. Now the silver is going to go into suspension in this, and instead of using a silver cell, which would use electrolysis, I'm just going to dilute it, purify it through filters, and then I will put it in a clean beaker and introduce a copper sheet to it, and the copper will cause the silver to drop out of solution, but the other metals will not. So at least that's the theory. So anyway, ta-ta for now. Well, the reaction slowed down a little bit, so I'm going to add a little more nitric to it. Well, that thing, that pooped it up a little bit. We're a little bit more vigorous, so I'm going to go back to making tongs. Okay, she's slowing down a little more. I'm going to add the remainder of the nitric acid and wash out the beaker, dump that distilled water in there. Well, I've got the heat on under there, and she's still bubbling away a little bit. It's getting pretty close to done, but you know, this must have been really close to pure silver, because no brown fuming, especially when it was the nitric acid was first introduced, which is sure signs of the copper that would have been in the sterling. So I don't know what this was, but well, she's just about down to her last little bit. I'm going to go ahead and just turn the heat off and let it sit till it cools down. Then I'll add the water and we'll be ready to filter it. Okay, I moved this in onto the table in the shop. It's not gassing. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to add an equal amount of just clear distilled water. Now I'll get the funnel ready and we'll run it through the filter. So what I have here is a filter flask. I'll be capable of putting a vacuum onto that, and then the funnel on top, that's a ceramic funnel, a Buckner funnel, and it uses these little round filter papers, kind of similar to a coffee filter. In fact, in the background there in front of that one jug, I've got a funnel with a coffee filter. I'm siphoning off the liquid out of my defunct silver cell that I did a boo-boo on. Didn't lose any silver, but it was a cool process growing the crystals. So I'm going to put this filter in and start filtering the liquid. Okay, the filter flask and the funnel, I have a little hand-operated vacuum pump. I spent a fortune just to do this once. Probably spent $250 on all of the parts and pieces. But damn it, I wanted to do it, and it looked like fun and what have you. So I'm going to dump some of the liquid in, and it's starting to drip through. Then I'll take the little vacuum pump. You can see it greatly increase. Well, I guess you can't. It greatly increased the flow. There's just a very tiny bit of residue left in the bottom of the little beaker here. We're gonna go ahead and dump it all in there. Now I'm going to rinse the beaker out to get every little bit of liquid, because that liquid's got silver in it. Boy, this really came out clear. I mean, it just had to be almost pure silver. I'm going to rinse the filter a little bit more. There is almost no residue in there. Okay, I'm going to put the brew. I'm going to pour it into a clean beaker. Then again, I'm going to rinse everything out. I'm using distilled water because that's how I saw how you do the process, but I've also seen the processes where you just use tap water. So we're getting ready here. Just for clarity of vision, I'm gonna move the beaker. I'll get a piece of, get a white background on that, and then I'll go get my copper and we'll get right in on it. And Okay, I got a piece of copper. This is electrical grade. It's just about pure as you're going to get. And then I'm going to apply it to the solution. And it's already, well, this is going to be hard to see. It won't focus. But the silver is already starting to build up on the copper. I was hoping that would have... Well, let me see if I can pick this up to where you can see it. No. But you can see the silver particles floating. It's pretty hard to get this to focus, but I'm carefully gonna tip that up and you can see the silver that has dropped out. I'm gonna let this sit for quite a bit, and then I'll wash off the copper and we'll run it through a cone filter and clean it up. Well, it's getting there. It's still bubbling a little bit, and could be the fact there was a little free acid, but the copper is still dropping out silver, so just an update. Okay, I'm pouring off the liquid, and what I think I'm going to do is I'll run electrolysis on it and get anything else that's left. So anyway, here, this goo is the precipitated out silver, of which get every last little bit of that out, because every bit of that is silver. Okay, we'll just let that continue to filter out of there and get ready to dry it. Okay, it looks like all the water's run out, the yucky water. Now I'm gonna spray it down with distilled water. And we'll just let that go ahead and drain. It looks like it's got a little of the super fine silver coming out of it, but we'll deal with this filter. There's going to be silver in it no matter what I do, so it's going to be rinsed 3 more times, which I'm not even going to bother videoing, and then I'll get it on the hot plate and we'll cook it dry. Okay, I've done the drying process. And what I have here, this yucky looking stuff, got a little bit of the filter paper in there, but that'll come out with the borax. So what I'm going to do is get a crucible loaded up with this and some borax and pack it pretty tight, and then I'll melt it down. Okay, I've got my silver powder borax loaded up into a larger crucible. I put it in the furnace. I'm going to go ahead and get this melted. Hopefully it'll melt. I know they have a lot of problems melting the powders because they don't melt real well in crucibles, so we'll see what we get. Well, being this is Oregon, even though we were in the 80s yesterday, same today, I just take my molds and set them up on top of the exhaust of the furnace, space them off with see what I got, and if it didn't, I'll get the mold. I'll heat the mold up and re-pour it. But I also see I poured a bunch of borax went in with that, and so I may have stuck the mold together, but it's throwaway anyway. Well, it didn't pour, but here's the ingot. I mean, you can tell by the color, it's pure silver. I just weighed it, and the acid took out, it was 27 point, I can't remember what it weighed, but anyway, it lost about 2 grams. So whatever the impurities were, and I may have lost some in the process, I don't know. I think I got it all out. I'm not all totally up on that. So anyway, there's some purified silver that I think from the get-go was pretty pure.